Greetings, everyone. P. Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of the Book Club. Yeah, it's been a few months. Ralph just informed me that it's been probably 5 or 6 months. Doesn't seem like that long, but maybe it has. Ralph Tamborra, Count Ralphus is in the house. What's going on, my friend? Good to see you again.
Happening, bro.
We just hung out
Yeah,
last
good
weekend. We
morning.
were over at Steve Keeler's big anniversary party, listening to some bands and having a good time just a week ago. And now we're here talking books because
Yeah.
Ralph and I are both voracious readers. I don't know how many other people read books nowadays, but we do, and we like talking about them. So we've each been busy. I think Ralph's probably got more than me, but I've got a nice little stack here of music and Hollywood related stuff here that I have been busy reading. And generally, we talk about like biographies and autobiographies and things like that. So why don't we'll just go back and forth real quick as we go through the episode. So start us off with your first selection.
All right. This is the one book I had pulled out for the last episode we did, and I just left it to the side, thinking I was going to talk about it last, and then I forgot about it. We went through a bunch of books the last time, but this one's Vinny Stigma, the most interesting man in the world. And Vinny Stigma is a New York hardcore legend, one of the godfathers of New York hardcore. And this book is real thin, and it's got like a comic book in here. It's got just like funny things in here. He's got recipes and he's just such a character, this guy. If you ever see him, but they did like a stigma man comic book. He like helps old ladies across the street and helps people to like CBGBs and stuff, bringing pizza to people. And it's funny. He's a character. And this is one of those books you can read it in like one day or one sit down with this. But I really wanted to mention it because I left it out the last time. So everything else I read since the last episode that we did.
Wolf. Okay, there we go. Both of us
Shit.
froze there for a second. I was like, what's going on?
Oh,
Yeah, both
yeah.
of
I
us.
was
I
like,
was
oh,
frozen too.
we
I was
just.
like, very strange. All right, so I generally read, as Ralph and I were talking off camera, it's like, I generally read lots of bios and autobiographies by, artists that I love, bands that I love, but I also oftentimes will buy stuff and read of artists that I'm like mildly interested in, or sometimes even maybe not into all that much, just because I love reading about rock stars and actors and things like that. So I've got a collection here of stuff that from bands that I really like a lot. And a couple that I don't really know much about, but I've heard good things about these books, so I figured let me check them out. And so my first choice, I'm actually not quite finished with this yet, but I wanted to talk about it today because if I didn't, I would finish it, I'd put it away, and then I would forget about it for the next episode. So I didn't want to do that. So I actually I like her as a solo artist. It's not really in my wheelhouse of music that I normally listen to, and I really like the band that she came from, who I think are really fun. I always kind of dug them. It's Belinda Carlisle, Lips Unsealed. So I've always dug the Go-Go's. I think they've always been a fun band. Again, I don't really listen to that style of music all that often, but I've always liked them, and I like some of her solo stuff. And I never thought she was such a wild child, right? I mean, this is like a crazy story. You want like the sex, drugs, and rock and roll story. This is totally it, and loads of fun. And it's made me want to go out and pull out my Go-Go's music and check that out again. And amazing how like she and the band were just a big part of that whole like late 70s like post-punk movement and all the crazy stuff going on in the early 80s and just another like tale of rock and roll excess like in a big way. And I think for a lot of us we're all fascinated by that stuff, right? Especially people who lived through that time and maybe almost didn't live through that time and now they are talking about it and how they got through it all. So yeah, really cool book. Like I said, I'm almost finished with it, but I did want to talk about it. Lips Unsealed by Belinda Carlisle autobiography. Back to
And
you.
the other member of that group had a book years ago. I kind of remember, and I
The
just
guitar
remember
player, right? Was it the guitar player, the drummer? I don't remember exactly.
the little girl with the short black hair. Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
she's a guitar. I
yeah.
was never much into the band, but I remember hearing about how crazy it was their early days, and like they would get male groupies and stuff, and they were just like from what I heard. So it sounds like it'd be pretty interesting book.
Yeah, it's a really good book. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. So good stuff.
So this is a little one that I got called Metal Gods, a tribute to Judas Priest. It's a little graphic novel, but I was looking for another book on the Decibel magazine website, and I found this. And it was only like $5. I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll get that. And what's in here is it's like all this great artwork. It's there's so many cool things in here, but they'll have like different guys from different bands telling their story about Judas Priest. Like here's Chris Reifert from Autopsy,
Oh, nice.
and then he tells like a little story, and it goes like with cool artwork that goes with it all. Um, but the other people that contributed to it is Scott Clarkson from Repulsion, Robert Garvin from Surf Ungol,
Oh, nice.
Mark Shelton from Manila Road, Joel
Wow.
Grind from Toxic Holocaust, Phil Anselmo, Jarvis Leatherby from Night Demon, and Jeremy Wagner from Broken Hope. And there's other people in here too, but it's just kind of weird how they got like all these like death metal people and stuff. But really fun read. Another one that you can read in like one sitting, you know.
That looks pretty cool. Yeah, that's it's like almost like a comic book type of thing. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a little graphic novel, but it's yeah, it's cool and it's so cheap too. Only like $5 on
Can't
the
beat that,
Decibel
right?
magazine.
Can't
Yeah,
beat that. All right, I'll just do this one real quick because I did do a video for it the other day, but in case folks missed it, Blockbuster, The Sweet Story by Martin Popoff, all about the UK band Sweet. This is absolutely terrific. If you're remotely interested in Sweet, you got to have this. Again, it's his album by album look at the band, and another one of those instances of a great heavy band from the 70s that early on was doing more kind of pop stuff, and that kind of stigma followed them throughout their career, and they just never had good luck with management and record label marketing and push and whatnot, and were kind of always thought of as a singles band and had really great albums and some really really heavy stuff. And yeah, band that should have been bigger, and they sadly weren't. But yeah, The Sweet Story, Blockbuster by Martin Popoff, definitely check that out. Really really good.
and being an album by album series, does he get like all special guests throughout it, like he did with the Judas Priest and the AC/DC, Iron
Not
Maiden,
on
and all
this
that?
one. This is all him, but it's loaded with interviews with the guys in the band. And, of course, three of them are gone now, but he has spoken to most of them over the years. So yeah, this one's a little bit different. It's not the like a panel book. It's more just him.
Cool.
But it's really good. It's really good. Every chapter is a different album, and it's quite good.
Yeah, I love them series. I like that's why I've been holding on to the Judas Priest one and haven't read it yet because I like sitting outside with the box radio, drink a beer, and listen to like the album that I'm reading about as I'm sitting out there, you know.
I mean,
But
it's like
it's so
impossible not to do that. I mean, that's the whole week I was reading that. I was just listening to Sweet constantly. I would go to the gym, listen to Sweet. I'd be in the car, listen to Sweet. I'd listen to them at home because it just makes you want to like experience the music as you're reading someone talking about it and explaining it, right? So even though I've had all these albums forever, I hadn't listened to them in a while, and it was so good, like listening to this catalog again. So I love doing that. It's so much fun.
yeah, Martin brings up so many little details that you don't think about when you're listening to the music, and
I know.
you
Yeah.
just find out so much more. So then when you re-listen to something, you're like, oh yeah, that's what Martin was talking about there and stuff. I love those books; they're great.
Yep.
Um, so this one you actually talked about the last episode we did, and I said how much I would love those books because I'm a big fan. And the author Bill Fleck actually just sent them to me in the mail, signed copies. So I'm going to do this as a double one. It's Chaney's Audition and Chaney's Baby, The Wolfman, 1948, and The End of a Dream. And the other one is the Chaney's Audition is Man-Made Monster and The Thorny Walk of the Wolfman. These were so cool. I read them back to back, and I knew about him. I knew about his problems with alcohol and stuff, but I did not know so much about him. He has a really great story. I'd love to see a movie made about him. They made a movie, The Man of a Thousand Faces, about his father, but he has a story in himself in there, and
Oh, he
it was
does.
just
Yeah.
so interesting to learn about all of that. I watched like The Wolfman again. Now I'm thinking about how he didn't get along with the actress and everything. It's just like it gives you so much depth to everything. I really love them, and I thank him so much for sending me those books. And if you get a chance, if you're a Lon Chaney Jr. fan, definitely check them out because they're really really in depth.
Yeah, I really enjoy them too. And I know Bill a long time, and he's a big like Universal horror fan, just like me. It's like, it's we every time we're together, we talk about that stuff, and it's just yeah. I mean, books like that are a labor of love, right? Because who else is doing books on Lon Chaney Jr., specifically
Yeah,
about those movies and whatnot. And it's crazy how And that's because we could have a whole conversation about Lon Chaney Jr. But isn't it crazy how he got such like typecast in roles like that? And meanwhile, he
Yeah.
had this burning desire to be like a serious actor. He wanted to be like a leading man, and he didn't want to kind of follow necessarily in the footsteps of his father. But that's what the studio wanted, right? They wanted that next horror guy. They wanted the next Lon Chaney, and here's his son, right? And he had a good, made a good career out of it, but the end, the latter part of his life was pretty sad. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, and it's starting off with like Of Mice and Men and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
he took on like serious parts, but he still got typecast because of his father's name, and that's just kind of what Universal would do to different people, you know. But
Yep.
yeah, I would still think it was a great career to have, but you know, if you wanted to branch out and stuff, he couldn't. But I read a Bela Lugosi book and a Boris Karloff book, so this was like I needed this part too. You know, this is great for that whole series.
The trifecta of the three. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, my next another autobiography here from two guys from the Doobie Brothers, Long Train Running, Our Story of the Doobie Brothers by Tom Johnston and Pat Simmons, both guitar players and vocalists and songwriters in the Doobie Brothers with a little help from Chris Epting. Yeah, this was loads of fun. I'm a big Doobie Brothers fan, so and I like, I love especially the early stuff. Yeah, I don't mind the more the Michael McDonald era, but this really goes into detail about the origins of the band and all throughout the 70s and then Tom leaving the band and having to clean his life up a bit. He was unhealthy and he had some kind of ailments and things going on and then Michael McDonald joining and then them getting back together and then breaking up and then getting back together again. And it basically takes you all the way up to like a couple of years ago. So it's really, really current, which is good. And it just gives you a whole insight into the whole kind of like Northern California, rock scene in the 70s. Really, really good book. And again, another one of those books where as you're reading it and they're going through and talking about the albums and things like that, and the tours and all the stuff and all the crazy people surrounding them in the day and the groupies and all that kind of stuff and all the bands they play with and all the drugs they did and all that kind of stuff. It just makes you want to go out and listen to the music while you're reading it. So really, really fun book. Long Train Running, the story of the Doobie Brothers.
Well, this one was a really good one when I was looking for the book that I was looking for the Immolation book on, and I could only find it on the Decibel magazine website. And then I found the Judas Priest graphic novel, but I also found this one, Rotting Ways to Misery: The History of Finnish Death Metal. Really cool album cover or book cover. But this was really cool because it has a bunch of bands like Amorphous, Sentenced, but it was a lot of bands I've never really heard
All
before.
the
Rotten
underground
Sound I
stuff.
like. Yeah, it was just pretty much like all the bands that were the biggest in their day. There's like a list of them there on the back of the book, but it has like lots of pictures, and I just found it fascinating that like places like around the world, every country had like their own little scene going at the same time. They were all going for this extreme metal sound at the same time, and it wasn't popular anywhere. I mean, there was a few bands starting to really break out, Death and Morbid Angel and stuff like that, and they kind of influenced so many bands around the world. So it's just so cool reading about like a different country and their local scene and who was the big dog and that's in their part of town or whatever. And it's just really fun read, and it makes you want to go and read about these other bands because a couple of bands in here they sounded from reading like they're bands that I should know about, but I've just never heard. A lot of them never got broke out of the country. They never toured the states. The few that broke away, a lot of them actually like Amorphous. They changed their sound, but they early on they were like the death metal legends in their country. And a lot of the bands back then they changed. It was kind of not like they jumped on a trend, but they just evolved really quickly because I guess maybe they thought there was too many death metal bands. The scene got flooded really quick because this was happening in every country. But I just found this really interesting. It wasn't too big of a book, but it was really cool. Loaded with pictures of all the demos and album covers and stories of their scene, which is cool.
Cool. Yeah, huge extreme metal scene over there on the underground for years. Still to this day. It's still going on today.
Oh
Cool.
yeah, and it goes up to today too. It's like it's pretty modern. It's like 2020. This book came out
Okay.
originally.
That's pretty recent. Nice. All right. This next book was monumental in helping me do that Riot album ranking a couple of weeks ago. It's called Swords and Tequila, Riot's classic first decade. Again, another Martin Popoff book. For whatever reason, I have a ton of Martin Popoff books, and I never got this one. And as I was getting ready to do the album ranking, I'm like, shit, I need to go get that book by Martin because I think that'll really help me because it's an enormous catalog with so much variety in it, so much information and whatnot. And this was just it, I really needed to read this to be able to go and do that ranking because it just kind of helped me understand a little bit more the early workings of the band and all the lineup changes and the changes in sound from album to album and all the different singers and all the, the management issues that they had. This poor band was so great and just never made a dime. It's horrible when you read stuff like this. So it's definitely one of like metal's tragedies that this band was not huge. But yeah, really, really cool read. And I think it also helped me to appreciate some of the albums that I didn't know as well as some of the ones I've had forever. And really, really good. I highly recommend it. And it's also a great kind of like tribute to Mark Reale, the guitar player and founder who passed away a number of years ago. So yeah, Swords and Tequila, The Riot Story by Martin Popoff.
Yeah, books, bands like that really need a book because with all the lineup changes and everything, you lose track of like, all right, who was on this album? It's like hard to, so you need something like that, having it all in order. That's one of the great things I love about Martin's books. It's like just a timeline of everything, and it's very educational.
Yeah, for sure. And then, he always usually does like a discography at the back, which is always nice. So
Yeah,
well, yeah, I mean, here it's got all sorts of stuff about, I don't know if you can see it, but about all the albums and who
yeah,
played on them and the
yeah,
songs, all that sort of
yeah. What
great
song, when
stuff.
it came out, what country. Yeah, that's always great. All right, this one was recommended by you to me, and anybody else that's ever read it said, "Oh, you got to read this book," because they know that I love like the train wreck books, like the guys that just took the rock and roll lifestyle and went nuts with it and somehow survived it. But Glenn Hughes,
Yeah.
unbelievable book. This book, the autobiography. I mean, the whole time you're like, "All right, come on, Glenn, get off this cocaine already." He's such a talented guy, and man, he just keeps going and going and ruining his whole career and everything at the time. But for a guy who's so fucked up, he got a lot of work done, and I just love reading this book. It was just like the perfect kind of book for me. It was such a crazy ride this guy had, and I'm so glad he came out the other end and still killing it out there today. Really a legend.
It must be a newer edition because my cover is a little different, but
Yeah,
I've,
yeah. This is the tour edition. I don't think they added too much. Probably just a little bit at the end. They might have added to it, but yeah, it's the one that you could find in Amazon today.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's one of my favorite books. I love it because that's a great story of like persevering through
Yeah,
uh I mean, God, having, 20 years of that hell that he was living in, right? And he came out better than ever. So it's, you ever want to read about a success story in life, that's the one. Yeah. What an
and
inspiration.
they talk about our night that we both went back in the day to see Sabbath on the Seven Star tour
Yeah,
with
New Jersey.
Anthrax and Wasp, and of course that night is right in the book and everything. So I always find that interesting. Like what show that I went to gets mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff. All right, I'm gonna switch gears, do a little Hollywood stuff here. So, I'm a huge, huge fan of like 70s film, and there's a couple of actors to me that are like played a major part in my life because I just love their movies so much and I love their acting. And when I saw that this guy had a autobiography out, I had to get it, and it was amazing, and it totally lived up to my expectations. And that's Sonny Boy by Al Pacino. I'm an enormous Al Pacino fan. And this is so good because it basically gives you all the behind the scenes stuff of what makes Al Pacino tick, what he was going through in making all these great films and him getting into wanting to be an actor early on and all the kind of like weird stuff going on in his childhood. He had a weird upbringing in the Bronx in New York City, and his father left the family really early on, so he was kind of raised by his mother who had her issues and his grandparents. But it talks all about a lot of the relationships with other actresses that he's had over the years, and his friendship with people like Robert De Niro, and the various directors and whatnot. And had no idea he was like a big partier early on in the day, right? So he tells some of those stories as well. And just a great, great book. If you love Al Pacino and his acting and his movies, this is an amazing, amazing read. And, it's fellow Italian, right? I love all the Italian stuff that's in here, which is great. So really, really good. I just finished this like a week ago and amazing, amazing book.
I could see that being interesting because he's in so
Yeah.
many iconic movies. So many iconic movies. You're going to hear background stories that you might not have heard. That I'm sure there's some great Godfather stories and Scarface and Devil's Advocate.
What's
There's so
real,
many.
yeah, what's really interesting, Ralph, is the whole scene, it's a long part of the movie in the first Godfather movie where after he kills the two dudes in Little Italy, they send him over to Italy, and then he winds up getting married over in Italy and whatnot and being with all the Italians over there in Sicily. He does like a whole chapter talking about that, about how difficult that part of the shoot was because he had never been to Italy before. He didn't, he felt like so isolated there, and and meanwhile all these like poor Italians in the area that where he's this kind of pretty well off American actor and whatnot. He was talking about how like awkward the whole thing really was for him, but that it became such an iconic part of the film. So it's always cool hearing those little tidbits about behind the stuff scenes for these movies. Really, really cool book.
That kind of makes me think of the scene in Sopranos when they go to Italy and they feel so out of place there. They're I forget, Paulie was like saying shit and like, he was like all disappointed on how they
Well,
were
very
over
different,
there.
right? Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
completely
yeah,
different.
it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, a totally different world. So this is the book I was looking for on the Decibel magazine website, Into Everlasting Fire, The Official History of Immolation.
Uh-huh.
This book kicked ass. This was so cool. But these guys are just like they're not big partiers, they're not crazy Satanists, they're not, and these guys just they're like foodies. They want to get a good bite to eat after every show. And it's like for brutal death metal like this, they're the nicest guys in the world. I've met them a bunch of times throughout the years. They did an in-store at Rock Fantasy early on, and you used to see these guys at every show back in the day. They're just always out there supporting the New York City scene. And there's so many people in this book that I reckon. I mean, Prime Evil gets brought up. My friend Ed Varsity gets brought up a couple of times, and just John McEntee gets brought up. It was like the thing about a band like this is I was around for the beginning of a band like this, and it's great reading their whole story because I was in the scene at that time. Like some of the early thrash metal bands, I was a little young, but like when it came to death metal, I was right there for it. I got Scream Bloody Gore right when it came out and stuff, and so I was there buying all this shit as it came out. So this was just a great book. The timeline of these guys, such cool guys, really awesome, thick read. But I kind of flew through it because it was just I couldn't really put it down. Really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's this misconception that, people in death metal bands are X, Y, or Z, right? But it's amazing how many, I mean, we've had Chris Reifert on the show a bunch of times, and he's such a down-to-earth, nice, cool dude. John McEntee, I mean, all these guys, the guys from Immolation, they're just regular people, folks. It's like,
Yeah.
they're playing a very aggressive form of heavy metal, but they're not these crazy, whatever you might think they are. It's just they're just regular people like everybody else, and it's always cool when you read stuff like you mentioned the whole being foodies and things like that. It's like they're not going and sacrificing animals out back. They're like let's go. I'm going to go have a nice seafood dinner, or let's whatever.
Yeah.
And that's it. They're just like all of us. They're just that's what they do for a living. So yeah,
There's a lot of pictures of them hanging out with other bands, and it's all them eating dinner after a show with each other.
yep.
But I remember I got a tattoo from the drummer from Demolition Hammer when he was around, but he rest in peace. But he was a uh, tech for Deicide back in the day, and Deicide was one of those bands that I was like, oh, they're scary, and I kind of like that. They were like a dangerous band. Like you really thought he was Glenn Benton was like killing cats every night or something. And I started asking him all these questions, but he's like, dude, he's like, they're just a bunch of stoners. They just like to rile people up with all that shit. It's like if you met him, he just would smoke a joint with you and it'd be cool. And then it's like kind of ruined it for me because I wanted them to be that dangerous band. But then I got to meet him. I remember meeting him at the Chance They playing with All That War up there, and nobody was going near him. He was like standing there. I'm just like, I'm going over to him. I went over to him, said, "What's up?" Shook his hand, got a picture with him and stuff, because I knew he was just a regular dude. But
Yeah, they all are. That's they all are. So from Immolation. let's go to lead sister, the story of Karen Carpenter. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
I have, I mean, I have a soft spot for the music of the Carpenters. I like some pop stuff, right? I've always liked their music. But I've always heard like what a tragic story she was. And I saw this in the store. I had a whole stack of other books and I was like, do I get this? Do I not get this? And of course, I went online while I'm there on my phone and I'm like reading reviews. I'm like, all right, this sounds really good. Because sometimes I know you mentioned before, sometimes it's always interesting to read a train wreck book. That's this. Here you had this supremely talented musician and singer, part of a brother and sister, duet band. And man, what this woman put herself through, with this horrible self-esteem issue that she had, and just, her anorexia, just it killed her in the end. But for so many years, just like starving herself and purging herself, and like, and you read about how, like the last like couple of years of her life, she weighed like 85 pounds or something like that, and she was like
Uh,
5'10". Just think about that, right? And thinking still that she was fat. I mean, I know people struggle with this disease. They think they look terrible, they think they're fat and overweight, and they just keep losing and losing and losing and losing, and then everybody around them starts, what is wrong with her? What is wrong with her? But she doesn't think anything's wrong with her, and all the struggles that her family and her band and management tried to get her to, go into get help for this and treatment. And she fought it every step of the way. Just a really, really sad story. And, also what was really cool about this is reading just how much she loved playing drums. And, everybody always knows that she was a really good drummer, but like after like their first album or two, they moved her away from playing drums on the records and they just wanted her singing. And so she always really missed playing drums. And a lot of this book talks about her love for the drums. So, yeah, really, really sad but insightful book, I think, for someone whose flame kind of burned out really, really quickly. So yeah, lead sister, the Karen Carpenter story. Oh, by Lucy O'Brien.
yeah, I always see that one clip of her, like she was on some talk show or something, but she's like playing the drums and doing like just a solo, and it's like, wow, she kicked ass
He
back
was
then.
really good. Yeah, really, really good.
This is one Into the Black, the inside story of Metallica from '91 to 2014. Kind of a weird era to read a book about Metallica, but I read the Mick Wall book, Into the Black or something. I forget the name. Oh no, that's this one. But I forget the name of that Mick Wall one. But that was a really good one, and that went up to like
Nick
I
Wall's a
forget.
really good writer. I like his books a lot.
Yeah, all his books are great, but it came out a long time ago, so I like this book kind of takes off, and it's just a weird era of Metallica. A lot of the music I didn't even care about, but I still found it interesting just to read about, what was going on in this time era, and like, the whole like Guns N' Roses tour and all that stuff gets covered, and it's still pretty interesting read, but it was just one of those books that I found like for like $1 at a used bookstore, and figured, I'll get around to it sooner or later, and it sat around for years, and I finally got around to reading it. It was pretty cool.
Cool. So I got two left, and one of them is I'm pretty sure you have in your stack because I think we wanted to get to it the last episode and we didn't, and I know we were both reading it right around the same time, and that's yeah. So Brothers
Mhm.
by Alex Van Halen. Um, I enjoyed this book, but I will say I didn't enjoy it as much as some of the other Van Halen books I've read of late.
Me
I
too.
found that I wanted to hear more about Alex, I think, right? It seemed
Yeah,
like
especially after we just read those other Eddie books, that the,
right.
the Tone Chaser book covers so much, and it's weird how this book stops at a certain point too, where, even though the Sammy Hagar stuff's not a huge fan of it, but there's a lot of interesting stuff that was going on with Eddie and Alex at that time. Alex gets out of control drinking, and so I would have liked to heard more of that era. I didn't think he should have stopped it for unless he's planning on doing a part two to it, which I don't think he is.
And yeah, I mean that would have been interesting because I would have really, he doesn't really get into, losing his brother at all here, and I really would have liked to have heard like how his life has been since his brother, passed away, and yeah, it just kind of stops at a certain point, and I just was left, okay, well, where's the rest of the story type of thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like he wanted to tell his own personal story of his brother from the early years because everybody else is doing books and well, here's what really happened type of thing, right? That's the impression I got. But then I left wanting more. I wanted to know more about Alex,
Yeah,
and we don't
exactly.
really get it, right?
Yeah, I felt the exact same way. It was like I felt like I knew almost everything that he did talk about. There wasn't too much stories that I never heard before. I would have rather it been more his time in Van Halen, and of course he covered your brother and stuff. But it seemed like it was definitely lacking, a little disappointing. But it was a quick read, and
Yeah,
you
it was
know,
really quick.
hopefully he makes another book eventually, and he goes more into that
Yeah,
part.
we'll see. We'll see. But not bad. Just I was disappointed as well.
Right, so I got this one. I was looking for. We had Martin Popoff on the Almost Human channel that I do once a week, Almost Human Live, and he was promoting his new Iron Maiden book that's coming out, the 666-page book. But I didn't know what book was coming out, so when I went online, I seen that this one it was a album by album series, and this one came out years ago, but this is a revamped one, newer edition where it goes right up to the last album, and it's great. Like we were saying, it's like the panel books, and it's kind of like what we do on Hudson Valley Squares and stuff, where it's like a panel and everybody talks about what they think of an album, and he gets different people for each one, and you got to be part of the Judas Priest one. This one has like Bobby Blitz in there and stuff, and I just love hearing everybody's different take on how why the songs are important or why that album is important. But these are just always a great read, and I recommend any of Martin's album by album series. But at the same time, I found this book, and this was another pretty cheap one. It was like $11, but it's Iron Maiden: Legacy of the Beast, Night City, and this is a graphic novel. Uh, Eddie's like a kind of like a superhero. He's like a good guy. Um, I guess this is taken from a bunch of the comic books. I've never seen the comic books, but like at the end, it has like all the different covers
Oh, cool.
from the
That's
comic
pretty cool.
books. Yeah, it's a lot of great artwork in there. And again, it was like $11 or something like that. I don't know if there's other parts to this. I think there's maybe a couple more parts to this. I definitely gotta like look into getting some of the other ones. Again, you read this in one sitting, but it's pretty cool. If you're a Maiden fan, you're gonna want that. And then this one that you gifted me, Uriah Heep, a visual biography. I love these kind of books too, especially a band like this, because I wasn't a fan of them like early on, so there was a lot like I didn't know like who's in the band at what point. It's kind of like an album by album book because he just goes through the whole history of them, but then there's tons of pictures, and like I didn't know what these guys really look like so much. I got a Bombernog early on when I was a kid because it had like the more metal looking cover, but I had quickly moved into like really heavier music, so I never really went back until in the last like 10 years or so. And so this was just a really awesome read. And when it came to my house, Martin had signed it, and I didn't know why it was like, I'm like, why is Martin sending me a book, And I found out that Pete gifted it to me. So that was really cool. Uh, and then my last book is another Martin book, Sensitive to Light, The Rainbow Story.
Oh, that's a good one.
Um, yeah, this was awesome. Just finished this a couple days ago, and perfect timing because I'm going to be going tonight to Bethel Woods to see Richie Blackmore's Night. He's he just turned 80 last month, and I feel like if I don't go now, I'm never going to see him. So I didn't get to see him back in the day when he came with Purple on the Perfect Strangers tour. I didn't catch that Rainbow tour that he did in the 90s, which I don't even remember it happening. But I feel like this is my last chance to see him, and I got to see the god, fucking Richie Blackmore, one of the greatest guitar players ever lived. Of course, I'd rather it be Purple or Rainbow, but I'm gonna get drunk and scream out "Gates of Babylon" every in between every song until they throw me out, or until they throw him a Stratocaster and he plays it. But yeah, this was great. The whole timeline thing again, and this it's important because they change Richie changed members like he changed socks. He would get bored of people or whatever, and it didn't make sense, but he'd have such good members around him, but he just got restless, and he always had to go and keep moving and getting different people in there. But I love that book. It was a really great one. And I started reading the Gary Holt book. I was almost going to pull that out, like you were saying. I already read like 80 pages, but I'll be talking about that next time. But that's a killer book so far. If you got to get that, that's really it's.
Really
I'll
cool.
probably finish that in like 2 days. I can't put it down.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it. Yeah, it's a good Rainbow book. Yeah, you might as well go see him. I mean, I've been lucky. I saw him twice with Deep Purple and twice with Rainbow in the 80s. So I I've had opportunities to go see Blackmore's Night. I'm just not really a fan of the music, you know?
Yeah,
So for
me too.
me, it's like I have great memories of the Purple shows and the Rainbow shows. I mean, one of my favorite concerts of all time, Ralph, was Rainbow on the Straight Between the Eyes tour with the Scorpions tour and Blackout opening up at Madison Square Garden. That's still to this day one of my favorite concerts I've ever gone to. And it was just mind-blowingly good. So, and I saw the Perfect Strangers tour and I saw that Joe Lynn Turner was in the band and on Slaves and Masters. And then, he left shortly after and that's it. But yeah, you need to go check him out at least once.
Yeah, a couple months ago, he played the Sherman Theater in Pennsylvania, and I was thinking about going, and we didn't go. And then I started thinking, that was probably my last chance. I wasn't thinking how old he was. I'm like, that's probably it. Now he's playing Bethel, and I guess he's playing in the inside thing. You went there before, right? Because I remember seeing
Yeah,
you
I
had
saw Martin
pictures that
Barr
you.
from Jethro Tull there like a year ago, I think. Yeah. It's a cool little place. Yeah, it's not big, but it's cool. Great acoustics in there. Really good. It's a perfect
Yeah,
place to see them at. Yeah.
yeah. So my first time going into that venue, and Craig said the opening band was pretty cool, and I just got to see him on stage with a guitar, and
It's right
that's
in our
it.
backyard. You might as well go. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If I had to travel and pay parking and all that, I wouldn't have been going. But I was like, all right, this time I can't pass it up. But
Cool. I got one left here. I think I mentioned this on the last time that I had another book by this guy that I was waiting to read. So on the last episode, I showed off a book, a biography of Anthony Bourdain. Well, I had bought two when I bought that one, and the other one I finally got to reading after we did the episode. And this is In the Weeds, Around the World and Behind the Scenes with Anthony Bourdain, written by Tom Vitale. Tom was actually worked with Anthony Bourdain on the TV show for many years. He was his producer and director and or director, producer, I don't know, what something like that. Behind, I think he was his director on numerous episodes. So this was really good because it's like hearing the story of Anthony Bourdain from some guy who worked alongside him every day for many, many years. And all the crazy stories are here. And it's really kind of touching because they became really, really close. And I don't think Tom has gotten over Anthony's suicide. And he talks a lot about how he has struggled in his own life since Anthony killed himself, and which forced the ending of the show and left a huge void in his life, and professionally and personally. And so a really, really touching book. But again, I really like this a lot because I like these books where someone talks about a star's life because they were there every single step of the way, right? Every day with them. So really, really cool book. And I honestly, after reading this one and the other one, I don't think I need to read any other Anthony Bourdain books because I think I have the story now. And it's just really, really cool stuff. And I'm a big fan of Bourdain anyway. So that's my last one for today.
I
But
think it's cool
I got
how
a whole stack of other ones waiting.
I think it's cool how like he talked about how he was best friends with the guy, and when someone kills himself, it's so sad. But what about the person who was your best friend? What's that guy? That's gotta hurt so bad,
Yeah,
for
and like, did
someone
I
to.
did I miss the signs? Couldn't I have done something, right? And it's
Yeah, yeah.
and
How.
he talks about how much Anthony Tony Bird did for him, because I think when they first started working together, he was like an intern or just did like camera work or something like that. So he had like a really like lesser position on the show, and then over the course of like a year or two, they started giving him, well, you're gonna direct these episodes, you're gonna produce these episodes and all that kind of stuff. So he became an integral part of the show. And because of that, they had to work so closely together. And for many, many years. And then, he's like, why did he do this to us? Why did he do this to himself and his family? Why didn't we know that he was going through so much pain, and he goes into great detail about Tony's relationship with Asia Argento, Dario Argento's daughter. They had that big, affair thing going on there for a while towards the end, and how Anthony just became obsessed with her. And they kind of kept breaking up and getting back together. And then, like, apparently she got caught. someone posted photographs of her with some like young guy who was like 20 or 30 years younger than her from like a hotel room somewhere, and it just totally destroyed Anthony because he was still like massively in love with this woman, and Tom thinks that that was like kind of what put him over the edge, you know. So it's
Did
hard.
the Harvey did the
Some,
Harvey Weinstein stuff get brought up at all? The Harvey
oh yeah,
Weinstein with the
oh yeah, yep, quite a bit. Yeah,
yeah, I know she had a big part of bringing
yeah,
him down.
yeah. And Anthony was like paying lots of money to get her story to be told, and he was, you know, he was backing her 100% there. So, and you know, and again, they talk about how all that the Weinstein stuff and his relationship with her put a little bit of pressure on the show because he was so like obsessed with dealing with all that that he was his ideas of what he brought to each episode, you know, because every episode they had to go travel to another country to film, you know, or whatever they did. And he got very distracted, and his kind of things that he wanted to do on the show started changing, and he kept wanting to bring her on the show. And they're like, well, you know, it's okay to have her on once or twice, but so it really, really interesting stuff to see what everybody was going through at the time. And you know, even sadder to hear how he has struggled with his life ever since that day. And this was written, you know, a couple of years ago, so you got to wonder, like, hopefully he got his life back on track and you know figured out that you know life has got to move on, right? You miss him, and you know you miss doing the show, but he's got a great resume of working on that show for all these years. That hopefully that kind of gets him back on the right path at some point. So, but really good book.
Hopefully, writing the book was like kind of therapy for him.
He
You
talks
know,
about that. He talks about how much that helped him kind of get through this and get over it. So, and that's the way it feels. A lot of it feels like someone who really needed to get shit off their chest and kind of like exercise the demons and the depression and everything that he's been going through since Anthony committed suicide. And he talks about how at the end of the book he does feel better about things, and hopefully that going forward he can kind of move on from there. So very cool, very cool stuff.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I got a new John Lennon book. I got an MC5 biography sitting in there. I got that I bought that Deborah Harry book, which I'm really looking forward to reading. And I got a whole stack of other ones. So it's like I just went crazy and bought a whole bunch of stuff. So I got a Gary
I
Moore
got a
book. Can't wait to read that.
oh,
That's yeah, dying to read that.
I got a new wave of British heavy metal book from that Decibel magazine website too. Not it's not a Martin Popoff one. It's a nice big one. I'm looking forward to jumping into that. So they'll all be covered in our next. I definitely have
Okay.
enough for our next one
All
since
right, you gotta let
we'll
me
be
know how
doing
that
like
one is.
two
I may
months.
want to get that one. That sounds really good because like you know the Martin books
Yeah,
are great, but there's not a lot of them out there. So
yeah.
cool.
I'll send
So
you a picture of it.
okay, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely look into it. So that's what we've been reading, folks. So till next time here at the book club, let us know any interesting books you've been reading down below in the comments, and tune in another couple of months or a month or two or whatever. Hopefully not as long. Ralph's got to keep me honest here, so you know when you know, Ralph pings me every so often, it's like, "Are you almost ready to do another one?" So I like to at least have 4 or 5 read. You know, I don't want to just come with 1 or 2 books. So it's always better when we have a whole bunch of them. So yeah, thanks for watching. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube all together all the damn time. We got Hudson Valley
Damn
Squares coming
time.
up on Monday. We're going to be talking about Combat Records, the history of the label, and some of our favorite albums released on Combat, one of the great underground metal labels of the 80s. So don't miss that. And stay tuned. Tomorrow, we've got 2 ranking the album shows, Coney Hatch and Icon, 2 great 80s hard rock and metal bands. So stay tuned for those tomorrow. And we'll see you soon here with more stuff. I am Pete Pardo for Ralph Tamborra. Have a good weekend, everybody. And we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.